I got the Platinum Trophy in Anthem in the last 7 days of its lifespan. Let me explain. Anthem came out in 2019, and just across the board, everyone hated this game. It was supposed to be fun and exciting, a brand new type of BattleTech game. The game came out, had a lot of bad microtransactions, not a lot of good support across the board, and within months, this game was basically dead. So when they announced they were shutting it down, I asked myself, wouldn't it be a fun video to try and get the Platinum Trophy before it was over? So back in March of 2025, my friends and I came together and I went ahead and devised a plan to get the Platinum Trophy in Anthem. And then I played the game and I forgot about it. See, in my opinion, the game is pretty fun, but I was just so disassociated with what was going on in the gaming space that I played for a day, unlocked a couple of trophies, and then I forgot about it, thinking, hey, I'll come back to this when the time is right. And then January of this year came around and I thought to myself, oh yeah, Anthem's shutting down soon. I think it's at the end of January. I have a month to get the platinum. And then I realized that the date was January 5th and I had about a week to get that platinum trophy. Looking at the grand scope of things, it's actually not that bad. The biggest thing you have to do, as far as the most disgusting trophies that exist, are you have to play as every single class. So 1, unlock all 4 classes. In order to do that, you have to get to a minimum multiplayer level of 26. But in my journey, I definitely hit level 30 without a problem. It's pretty straightforward as you play the game. The other big trophy I have to focus on is the combat challenges. See, every single weapon in the game has a minimum of 1 to 3 levels worth of challenges. The trophies basically say you need to get level 1 cleared with every single type of weapon with every class. That sounds gruesome, and honestly, it's not that bad. The biggest issue is you have to hope to the RNG gods that you will get the weapons that you need. The other big set of trophies to worry about is all of the combat skill missions. All you have to do is clear 4 missions with every single type of weapon skill for every class. So that essentially means there's 12 weapon skills for all 4 classes. That's 48 class skills you have to master at least one time. And you do that by literally clearing 4 missions, and you can only equip 2 or 3 skills at a time. So in the end, you're going to be playing a lot of these missions. Granted, you were going to do it anyways, just to get higher levels, more rewards, etc., etc. From there, the biggest disgusting trophy in our path, do everything in the open world and then some. There's several different sets of collectibles, logs, glyphs, and so much more that you have to get. And that was a pain in the ass, but I'll get to that soon enough. And finally, the scariest and pretty much biggest time sink of a trophy that I think is going to be that you have to get your rarity level up to a certain extent and clear a mission. See, if you have, let's say, all rare gear or all epic gear, those are each their own trophy, where once you have enough of a high enough level and you clear a mission, you get the trophy. The last of those rarities is in the orange zone. You only unlock orange weapons when you get to level 30 and start doing the Grandmaster missions. So ultimately speaking, you got to get to the very end of the game and start the end game pretty succinctly in order to get that last big trophy. So the true question is, can I get the Platinum Trophy in Anthem in less than 7 days?
Yes!
So day 1, the very beginning, my goal out the gate was to focus completely on the story. Now, to my understanding, the story is pretty straightforward. It's not that complicated. The voice acting's pretty good. It's got some famous actors attached to it, some of the ones you know and love from the different anime games out there. So it's all really fun and exciting. The thing is that at this point in the game, I just don't care enough to learn everyone's names and the lore. I have 7 days to get through this bad boy, and I'm just smashing buttons to get through certain menus. Starting off, I have to focus on one class, so I decided to go with my favorite class in the bunch, the Colossus. This class focuses heavily on flamethrowers and rockets, and has a fun, cool AoE hit with fire. Overall, that's my playstyle anyways in these types of games, so I had the best time playing as the Colossus. Within that, I wanted to make sure that I got to the very end of the game so that I could start the end game journey whenever I could. And honestly, the journey to the end game wasn't that bad. In about 7 to 9 hours, I knocked out almost the entire story. I got to the very end with just the last mission in tow, basically the final mission of the game. Within that scope, I learned more and more about how to fly, how to travel, progression through collecting collectibles. I was really getting my feet wet with what I had in front of me. And what I had in front of me was not bad per se. I just started to learn more and more about why people did not like this game to begin with. For example, traversal, super fun. Flying around in your mech suit is awesome, and it doesn't even matter which of the 4 you choose. It's always fun to fly. Air combat is really fun and tight as hell. You're flying around, you're shooting dudes. Exciting stuff overall. And the world feels so alive, considering that if you're doing a side mission, the main story, or even just the open world mode, you're bound to run into random events that take place. And that's the part that feels the most exciting. You feel like you're in a world where stuff is always happening, and that's really good, especially when that's the kind of the motto and focus of the game. However, this game's been out for 6 years, and at this point, there's not much to really check out beyond the first missions you get to explore. These mission types repeat pretty consistently, so you're gonna see the same set of monsters, characters, alliances, and factions. You're gonna get the gambit of what these missions are within that first day of playing the game. So within that first day, I sunk about 10 hours total, just focusing almost exclusively on the story, while also trying to knock out all of the Colossus's weapons and the skill challenges. But as I was getting through it, I was really learning the game more and more. And my biggest takeaway was this. This is not the same game that came out in 2019. There have been things that have been removed from the game, such as loot boxes and certain microtransactions that have now been disabled and tweaked. Like in all MMOs or online games, every weapon and skill has a rarity class to it. The higher the rarity and the higher the number, the higher your overall class ranking is. So, out the gate, I had a legendary bright green, the best possible class for my 2 main weapons. Essentially, you could get game-breaking weapons from the second you started playing Anthem. These weapons range from kind of broken to 100% broken. So I was alternating back and forth between the weapons-based missions and the skill-based missions. Mostly because I was focusing on the story in that first day, I was able to knock it out so quickly because I had these broken guns. Basically what I'm saying is, if you started playing Anthem today, if it were still around in its current state, you could get the platinum trophy pretty easily because the weapons they give you are pretty freaking broken. And these weapons change out with basic currency. You don't have to spend a buck. You just have to play enough to earn gold coins to then purchase them from the store. I basically only used these overpowered weapons when I wasn't focusing on a weapons challenge or a skill challenge. Day 2 is where I ran into a bit of a bottleneck of a situation, because while I got to the end of the story, I didn't quite get to the very end. See, I thought I'd finished the missions in that first day, but the reality is, in the middle of your entire storyline, you have to achieve certain tasks in these 3 tombs in order to unlock the main story's progression block. So that means you have to clear a certain number of strongholds, perform a certain set of combos and moves, using certain sets of weapons. I couldn't do this with the Colossus class because the Colossus was pretty limited in scope. So I had to switch to the Storm class. That was the second class that I unlocked. In there, I was able to move faster, use all my elemental abilities to my advantage. And within that, I cleared the story. And that was pretty easy. When I wasn't playing with friends, this is where I took the time to fly around and start collecting the hundreds and hundreds of mandatory collectibles. And this is where the problem of the game really started to creep in from my perspective. See, there's about 6 to 8 different sets of collectibles that require you to fly in and grab the item. 3 of these collectible sets are complete RNG, meaning the atmosphere where they spawn, the different locations throughout the map, is essentially you'll know where these items spawn just because you've looked it up on a map. And you just have to hope that you get the right loadout. See, some of these collectibles you can just farm instantly. Go into a tomb, come right out, grab the collectible. Go in the tomb, come right out, grab the collectible. Go in the tomb, find the collectible, and you're good to go. Do that until you're done. More than 75% of the collectibles that are required in these RNG locations, you can do this way. The last 25% of the collectibles you need to get revolve around the Outlaw faction and the Sentinel factions. These just require you to fly around to the little bases that despawn. You have to load and reload and hope the collectible shows up. All the question marks you see above you in your little compass, that basically tells you a collectible is nearby. But that collectible isn't necessarily a collectible that you need. Most of the time, it's going to be a pile of trash that you shoot and get rare collectible pickups from. Things you can use to craft new weapons and such. So you're going to be flying around in these loops over and over again, and it's frustrating on three multiple parts. One, you have an idea of where things are, but you don't know how to make them show up. So it's just a matter of flying around and hope they show up. Two, there's tiers to these. So collect 10, then collect 20, then collect 50. Basically, each collectible class has 80 total. So once you think you have everything, prepare to do it again. Aside from the set of RNG collectibles, you also have to go around and collect these glyphs. These glyphs are just big green circles that appear on different walls, and these luckily are in preordained areas. However, this is where the frustrating thing comes into play. In my personal opinion, the worst problem about Anthem, the UI and the map. There's three different sets of UI that just collide all over each other. Pressing start is one menu, pressing the touchpad is another menu, and then pressing a menu within a menu. It's just gross and it doesn't work well. And more importantly, in the state of the way that this game is on the PlayStation 4/5, these menus load in and break all the time. Characters' pieces are missing. It's slow. You're pressing start and a different menu shows up. It's chaos. And from there, my biggest gripe with Anthem is the map. See, in games like Assassin's Creed or even Grand Theft Auto, or really any game that focuses on open world traversal, you can put pins and markers on your map, and sometimes if you're lucky, they'll even show you the path of where you need to go. Anthem does not do that. What I'm getting at is you basically need to use one of those interactive map IO Genie situations or follow a YouTube video. And that's really hard to do when you have no idea what collectibles you have collected where. So you have to go to the location of all 80 for glyphs and logs and just collect as much as you can. So that's 160 different unique locations that you have to visit and get the collectible. Now, the final set of collectibles you have to keep an eye out for are specific locations. Flying to certain areas where it tells you you're in a new area, activating a pedestal or a lookout location. These ones are predestined and are pretty easy to find. Look up a video, follow the guide. There's even a checklist in the menu to tell you if you found it or not. But once again, all of that is for when you realize that you can't drop a pin or a marker. This issue right here seemed like the most patchable and fixable thing, and they just didn't. As I started day 3 and well into day 4, that's where the same feeling of dread started to really boil across the board. See, every single location almost looks the exact same. So if you're trying to get all these collectibles, farm certain locations, etc., you start to go crazy looking at what's in front of you. In the mix of playing as the Colossus, I would switch from Storm and the Ranger class back to back just to try and knock out all the challenges. Again, these aren't that bad, but you have to hope that you get these weapons. So I would play as one class, knock out all the weapons that I could, try and hope to get other weapons. That didn't work, so switch to the other class and continue this process until I'd either unlock a new class or get new weapons. Now, weapons are actually tied specifically to certain classes. So if you're trying to get, let's say, more magnum and heavy pistol type weapons, you want to play as the Storm class. Whereas if you want the bigger, heavier duty guns, you want to play as the Colossus because those are actually specific to the Colossus class. The Ranger gets sniper rifles and machine guns and assault rifles. So within this week, I kept switching between the Storm class, the Colossus class, and the Ranger class because I kept unlocking more and more weapons as I went through. I finally finished the story, which that last mission was extremely anticlimactic, albeit a really cool set piece. By the end of day 4, I completely knocked out the Colossus class, the Storm class, and almost all of the Ranger class, but I had not earned enough experience to unlock the 4th and final class, the Interceptor. The Interceptor is a melee-based class that focuses on lighter weapons. Honestly, some of these skills is really what shines through when you're talking about Anthem. All 4 classes kind of feel the same because you use the same weapons across the board, with the exception of the Colossus class. But what really makes them feel so fun and unique is, in fact, that you have all these cool skills. I was still pretty impartial to the Colossus class because I like big boys doing big boy things, but the Storm class is a second favorite. So with the story completely done, about 75% of all the combat and weapon missions done, all I really had left to focus on were the collectibles, which is really freaking annoying, the final class, the Interceptor, which I could not unlock until I hit level 26, and getting my rarity of gear class up to Grandmaster level. That Grandmaster rarity class was the scariest one to think about because it would require a fair amount of endgame farming. But herein lies another problem that I think needs to be spoken about. See, when you're out in Anthem, you're on this one big traversal map, flying around in your mech suit, having fun with your friends, killing dudes, getting lost trying to get collectibles, so on and so forth. But when you're back in the base, you're in a first-person mode where you are walking around, talking to the different denizens of the base. And honestly, this sounds so mean to say, this is so boring. There's nothing exciting about this part. Talking about taking the exciting wins out of your fun gameplay and just putting you straight into the ground. It takes forever to walk anywhere. The maps barely function when you're trying to find where different quests and engaging conversations can be. I dreaded going back to the base over and over and over again. I do have to say, this feels like the most DNA of BioWare part of the game, just in having side conversations, branching paths, building up your reputation. It feels very important to what you have to do in the mix of this game, and that's the BioWare part. The mech stuff, albeit pretty fun and interesting, is not BioWare, and that's okay. They try something different, and the gunplay and the movement is what shines. The BioWare part of the game does not shine, and that's kind of weird. I forgot to mention the mix of all of this with all the different factions, you do have to earn enough of these faction points as trophies as well. These faction points will build up when you do certain side missions for certain factions, how you integrate and talk to certain characters and the paths you choose, and of course, getting those collectibles. Day 5 and day 6 were my true big collectible days. This is where I was done with the majority of the side quests. I was done with all the weapons missions and challenges except for the Interceptor, because I had just unlocked them at the beginning of day 6, and the collectibles list just seemed overwhelming. The trophy known as No Stone Unturned is this big, gigantic trophy attached to all of the collectibles. So it's not a matter of just getting one set, you have to get all of them for this one trophy. So you have a lot of flying around and flying around and flying around and farming and pathing and flying around and farming around and flying around. It just doesn't end. It took me literally 15 hours. I stayed up all day and all night just focusing on collectibles, which leaves me to the 7th and final day. Now, no one really knew when the servers were going to shut off, so I had basically Sunday morning from 6 a.m. to essentially midnight at Sunday into Monday to get the final set of trophies. What I had left was pretty simple. I had the final set of collectibles, I had to do all of the combat and weapon challenges as the Interceptor, and then I had to focus on getting my Grandmaster rarity level up based on getting gear. And that was the scariest part. How much more farming would I have to do to get to that point? That's when I discovered the legendary missions and strongholds. Strongholds are essentially raids that you could just basically do once you've beaten the game. There are strongholds that reminisce and kind of focus in on repetitive parts of the story. So I played the last level of the game in a stronghold raid mission over and over and over again. And by doing this, I was actually exploding my experience bar. But I had those broken weapons, so I was able to plow through these missions pretty quickly in between me changing out the skill missions and the weapon missions. So I soared to level 30 and had everything unlocked at that point. By the time I was done doing almost every weapon and skill-based mission, I only had 2 weapons left, a pistol and a Colossus-based weapon, which meant I had to play as a Colossus and just farm and farm and farm and hope I get that weapon in a run, or I had to play as one of the other 3 classes and get that last pistol. Once I got it, all I had to do was get 50 kills and boom, they were knocked out. I spent more time trying to get the weapons than actually killing dudes. Now, another weird thing about Anthem that I think is fascinating to talk about at this point in the game is that The difficulty kind of means nothing when you have these broken weapons. Whether you're playing on easy, normal, hard, or the eventual Grandmaster settings, the enemy points and their shields and their weapons go up, up, and up. They do more damage. They have way more health. But if you have legendary weapons out the gate and you're crafting them from the broken store, then it's not going to be an issue getting more of those. I was taking in friends who had just started the game and launching Grandmaster missions with them and beating them no problem. What I'm getting at is that the difficulty part of Anthem has no meaning at this point in the journey. If you've got those weapons, nothing feels like it's going to change, which is great for our journey of getting the platinum. So as I'm winding my journey down, there's one trophy left before I get that infamous platinum. And that trophy is to get my Grandmaster ranking of rarity up. With the Grandmaster difficulties unlocked, I can essentially play any mission in the game at Grandmaster levels. And there's 3. Since the Colossus was my absolute favorite class, I decided to go with the Colossus and spend the next 8 to 9 hours hopefully getting that rarity level up. And lo and behold, because the game was broken, I had earned tons of legendary components. So all I really had to do was change out all my skills and certain components. I had the best weapons possible. I just needed my screen to all be orange and yellow weapons. So in learning all of this, I made the discovery that all I had to do was play the very last mission of the game, beat the final boss, and farm that over and over and over again for several hours on the highest Grandmaster difficulty. I thought, you know what, that's going to take all of the time I had left. It took 2 hours. It took 2 hours. I had at least 5 to 8 hours left by the time I had gotten the platinum trophy in Anthem, depending on where you lived and depending on what you want to make of the narrative. And in the end, getting the platinum, the thrill of the hunt, getting that platinum before this game was gone for good was an exciting feat. That was the part that made this so fun, and playing this fun game with friends made it even better. By the time I got to the end of my journey, I felt like this was a wonderful platinum, and this story and this journey I went on was fun and exciting because of how bad it was. It's so weird because this game, there is a great game here. And I don't even like these multiplayer online weapon-based progression games. I'm not a big fan of Destiny. Warframe's not my jam. The most I enjoy is Borderlands. And that's because of the art style, the writing, the performances, and the goofy guns. But you take all that away, you have Anthem and mechs, and the thing barely worked. That's what Anthem is, an online game. There is no offline perspective when it comes to Anthem. And that's why it's so tragic at the fact that as of today, you can no longer play Anthem. There's no single player thing. There's nothing there. A big reason why the stop killing video games movement took off in the last 2 years was for this specific thing right here. You can't play online games because the people who own the game said bye-bye and just shut it down. It's why now more than ever, video game preservation is so important. But it sucks that we can just say goodbye to a video game forever. See, when a movie comes out and a movie bombs, it comes to Blu-ray, DVD, streaming services, whatever, Amazon Prime. You can buy it, right? Even though it sucks or even though it wasn't well reviewed, you can physically and digitally own that thing forever, theoretically, and enjoy it whenever you want. But you can't with games like Concord. You can't with MMORPGs like City of Heroes. And you definitely can't do that with games like Anthem. And that's the saddest part when I think about all of this. So I look at Anthem, I look at Concord, I look at City of Heroes, I look at these games as what they once were and what they are now. And I relate to them way more than I want to. It's like looking in a weird funhouse mirror at a circus, except it feels real. With that in mind, I would give Anthem, I guess, my completionist rating of finish it. But at the end of the day, oh my God, Mo, get out of here. And I give this game my completionist rating of, well, I would give it a finish it, but you can't today. And that is super weird.